Adult sex shop cashiers and employees. What is the one or more things you secretly judge people for buying? People who buy vibrators, then return them later with open boxes. People actually do this. Former sex shop employee. Once had my 80-year-old neighbor lovely little lady come in and buy hardcore gay bondage porn, usually Nazi-themed. She liked blonde gay men apparently. Currently work in neuroscience, patient-facing, and once every 3 months I have a patient who's an old customer come in. We tend to avoid each other when possible. Not me, but my old manager's partner was the owner of a high-end sex shop. A man buying anything insertable without a flared bottom who doesn't take the receipt. It's probably not a gift for his female companion, and it will probably end in an emergency room visit. Story from a friend. The adult shop is located within 15 minutes walk of a high school. I went to this high school. Once you find the adult shop, it quickly becomes a goal to get in there and shop around. Many students much too young try to get in regularly. It then becomes a race of birthdays. The day someone turns 18, they're waiting at the front door of the shop before they open. The story. My friend who worked at the adult shop had to the principal on speed dial because often he couldn't get the students out of the shop and didn't want to involve police. He remembers one of the groups was especially difficult to get out and the principal threatened to call the cops. To my friend's surprise, the following day the same group walked into the store. He called the principal and the group left. My friend later saw multiple posters around the streets and presumably around school of a picture of the principal going into the adult shop stating they see him go in there all the time. I can only assume this was an attempt to get him fired. Not sure if it worked. The woman who works at the adult store near me has a really bias. Whenever I go in, she's always bubbly and excited and ready to talk to me about the 38,000 dildos and vibrators they have. Whenever I ask about the male sex toys, she gets so awkward and drops to this curt professional tone, like I don't know. Do you see it there? I guess we don't have it, or I don't know what that is. It is these. Whatever these are. Anything that a dude puts his dick in makes her internally cringe, and she can't look me in the eye, but a dual-pronged, double penetration vibrating and pulsating dildo. She's going to tell me all the spots it will hit on my wife in every last detail. Oddly, I had a conversation about this at work yesterday. All the ladies were talking about sexual empowerment and taking care of themselves, which, hell yes. Ladies, you do you with their equipment. But the conversation came to a halt when I said it's so great that both sexes have sex toys and don't have to feel shamed for embracing their sexuality anymore. Dead silence. Then you mean those fake lady parts? EW. When I pointed out that a dildo is just a fake man part, I got a lot of confused and grossed out looks. Now I just say hi and keep my mouth shut to all the women at work. It's a society-wide bias. Woman with sex toy. Sexually empowered Yas Queen. Man with sex toy. Undesirable lonely basement dweller EWW. May I tell a story from my roommate who worked at a group of young guys, all around 18 to 19 years old, came into the store together one day and started browsing. After a bunch of whispering amongst each other and looking a little sheepish, they came up to the counter, with a fleshlight. One fleshlight. Okay, whatever. She figured it was just one of them getting their first sex toy. Maybe for their 18th birthday. Nope. All of the boys whipped out their wallets to pool their money for it, because they were going to share this one fleshlight between the 6 of them. Fleshlights are extremely porous. Even if they tried to thoroughly wash it before passing it to someone else, there would still be semen gunk from the last guy, and it would build up very quickly with 6 of them using it. It's like 6-way sloppy seconds. Except it's not self-cleaning like a vagina, so nasty bacteria and fungi would start growing in there, and get into their dicks. She told them this. Almost begged them to just get a bunch of cheaper fleshlights instead of one fancy one. But they said nothing, bought it, and scurried out. I still wonder if those boys ended up with genital infections. Don't share or buy. Honestly, porous sex toys. Kids. Friend of mine worked in an adult store. He would normally have nothing to do, so occasionally I would go in to bring him lunch and we'd look at the funny porn titles. And when a customer came in, I'd pretend I was browsing. Once a guy came in inquiring about butt plugs. He wanted to know if they had anything that could meet his size requirements. My friend broadly asked what exactly he meant. The guy replied, "Well, the biggest thing I managed was a fire extinguisher. No judgment of course, but Christ. I worked in an adult store for about 4 years. I nor anyone I worked with would judge anyone for what they brought apart from glass pipes, but that's another story." Saying that, what people would steal was always funny. I had one guy shoplift a huge stainless steel dong and then try to come back into the store with it in his pocket. Another guy stole a vibrator and used it in our changing room. So that was an interesting day. Also, penis pumps got stolen every other day. They don't increase your size, by the way. Sounding rods. When I was a young teen, a guy the first dated very briefly and broke up with randomly called me from UV to tell me about sounding and his exploration of it, as well as this book I should read, Twilight. I've been through a lot since then and it's still the most unsettling thing that's ever happened to me. Yes, Twilight has that effect on people. I used to earn the bulk of my living from writing erotica and selling it online. It's not that I judge people for it, exactly, but the best-selling books were always the most ridiculous ones I could write with the least subtle titles. I ended up spinning off a whole new pen name for one particular fetish where the stories would take me literally about 4 hours to produce, beginning to end including the cover, because people would eat it up. It's not so much judgment, because everyone's got their kinks. But there's a bit of eye-rolling when the stories you're really proud of sell about 4 copies, but help. My own penis is trying to get me pregnant. A self-seduction mpreg fantasy sells enough copies on its own to pay your rent for the next 2 months. No, that's not a real title. No, that's not a fetish I write. Yes, I'm pretty sure that story would absolutely fly off the shelves. Not judgmental, but more of being a bro. I worked for Blockbuster Video back in mid-90s and would always get questions about movies and such. But one question I would hear often would be the hushed question, "Do you guys have any porn?" Me knowing what the competition carried, I would say, "Sorry, man. Blockbuster is a family-oriented business, and while I could point out a few good movies that have some tea in a scenes, it's not what you are looking for. But I tell you what, go down the street to video store name and tell them my name from Blockbuster sent you and they will be glad to help you out." I actually had a few guys come back to tell me they were happy with the selections of the other store, but would come back to Blockbuster for their family movies. As a teenager in the 90s, I felt like I was being judged for buying the tokens required to watch a couple minutes of porn in the back. Basically, you insert a token, and select from about 15 different channels of VHS porn being looped. All kinds of bizarre porn. I noticed creepy-looking dudes hovering around the little rooms where one could do this. Well, one day as I was watching the porn, I hear a knock on the wall of my room. I noticed a hole in the wall. On the other side was a creepy dude whispering, "Hey, pissed. Hey." I'm like, "Yeah." He whispers, "I wanna see you jerk off." I declined the invitation, and got a little nervous. Next thing you know, the guy's dick started poking through the hole. I dropped whatever tokens I had, and bolted for the door. Later on, I learned that glory holes were fairly common in pawn shops with the video arcade in the back. It was a trick the whole time. He just wanted you to drop all those tokens so he could have them. Former sex shop worker here. I also happened to work about a block from my city's area. There was a major LGBT street that shares its name with a place of religious worship and have a few stories. A major one is how what appeared to be the smallest people buying the Great American Challenge. If you see it, it even says on it "not for beginners." A second one is how many times people tried to steal a certain gay porn star's ass. Trust me, it was pain in the ass just to remove it from the top shelf, given that it must have been a good 10 to 15 pounds of rubber. I used to work at a sex shop, and whilst there, due to my in-depth research and understanding how our products worked, I quickly became their top salesperson. With all that effort, it taught me not to judge, as everyone had their own kinks. What I do judge is when others come into the shop and try to get us to describe how a product is used just for them to get off. I'm not consenting to that, so f*** off. My cousin worked at one and told me a story of a guy who would come in once a week, presumably on payday, and spend time looking at a sex doll that, according to him, is ungodly expensive. Well, after a couple months of this, he finally pulled the trigger and bought it. He never came back in again. I used to work at a store that had porn, just the movies. No accessories, and it was never what the customers were getting that caught my attention, but how they went about it. For example, I had one woman who would come in every Friday wearing a polo featuring the local Catholic school's logo. I made the assumption that she worked there, and every Friday night she would get lesbian porn and say that she was getting it as a funny gag for a sleepover she was having with her friends. I would have never noticed her if she hadn't said anything. What a great gag gift. Haha guys, let's watch a film. Oops, that's not Finding Nemo, it's Finding Your Clit. I don't judge this one, but I do wonder if people buying sounding rods really know what they're getting into. If that's your thing, then go and do your sweet thing, but if it's like a stupid dare, which happens, please be careful. The one thing I do slightly judge is people who buy the gross jelly vibrators that are made out of garbage, but we have to sell them as novelties. We advise every customer against them if you're actually going to use them inside of your body. We offer decent silicone vibrators for maybe $10 more. You would think that people would spend an extra $10 to avoid infections, but oh no, the sparkly jelly one is just fine because it's pretty and gets the job done. No, it won't, because it's battery powered, which isn't very powerful, and there's no way to clean something that's porous. But sure, take the sparkly one. Also, PSA, if vibrators aren't always your cup of tea, try a Satisfier, and if you like that, upgrade to a womanizer. Vibration is great, but air stimulation suction like clitoral stimulation is another level. Womanizer has an internal with external option as well.